mine's down in 2 minutes, and I can't, how do I cancel it?
Should not have battery.
It was been plugged in all day, it's full battery.
Never stuff.
No.
Brandy's needy when it
Well, I
comes to
just
computer
closed
stuff.
it, but like it said, it's shutting down in 2 minutes.
Never known, wow,
What it is now.
from the time that I had toured it before, I didn't know about.
No, it's fine.
Yes.
I don't think, just things are, you know, deteriorating differently, but I was asked like a 5 to 7 year, what would last, that's kind of what I'm trying to show. You know, stuff that we don't think will
I
make it,
still
like
want to close
policy,
because
No, I don't know.
sound system,
We're on.
stuff like that, that's what I was showing her. It was for you, it looks like something, it's an LED light, I don't know if you see it. You should have put it here. That was last year, wasn't it? Or right before, during COVID, or right before?
No.
Good God, come up
But
here.
I'm,
Long time no
but I've
see.
been through it more down.
That is the mic. That's the mic. If need, we can, that's,
I know it.
that's good.
Come back on.
Good answer.
Yeah.
we're getting an update, 5%.
Well, it's the usual YouTube screen.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah, it's not the new system.
What time is that?
So, if that gets you away, well.
And it will take 9 to 10 minutes probably. Since it's 6:53.
Yeah, it'll be second over 6, 7.
3 of them. Plus the
Okay,
mic.
Yeah.
I would say so. Those that must be broadcast. I guess why would we use
Yeah, that's where I have information on it.
Okay.
That might be carried over.
Yeah, they're not like me.
Right. Right, I figured it, and I'm gonna get from that You know what I mean? So, like, I have.
Well, it's getting
other one I just
signal
have
from
now.
the panel now.
it's actually just.
Oh, yeah, it's got light down there.
Nothing on the computer. Work with other companies.
We do.
That's funny. I hear that all the
Are you still going to
It's a broad range.
We're on a rotating schedule. 2 days.
Yeah, actually, I went to school there.
2 days a week at the
Might as
office.
well
3
go.
days from home. That's gonna be a permanent thing. We're all electronic now, anyway. There's no feeling paper we take as a check. So, yeah, we can buy most.
That's a good observation. I think you're absolutely correct.
Try that.
Yeah, not a variety.
Where's your office?
We're like,
Oh, yours is still right.
Alright, how are you doing?
they have some projects coming up. So,
Well, that would work, see?
yeah. They looked at a bunch of different options. So, pricing. Something like a switch around.
That's really funny. Yeah.
I said I was finishing up control, so I need to get back to my healthy.
Got you, Zach, off the trailer. Have a seat.
I just read it. That makes sense, like, so you say you're gonna work on sort of a back, so are you like a mailing back?
You could do that with like a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, no, that's.
Yes, sir.
That makes sense to me.
Oh, IT department.
Come on, it was just one meeting.
Right, but
That's important.
seriously. There went the neighbors.
Say your cousin.
Just bring them all out.
Nobody else.
We need to know who you want.
We already know.
When he opens his mouth, you know.
But not when you think here with your pretty.
Sitting around.
I did, it must be buried in.
I mean, I had no idea about how to handle that.
Was,
Because it doesn't seem like there's any sort of. It hasn't located anything that easily does that for me. So.
It's 7 o'clock. I'll call this work session of the Montoursville Area School District Board of Directors to order on this Tuesday, March 22, 2022. The time is 7 p.m. And ask the secretary to take a roll call.
Mr. Albert is absent. Mr. Badger?
Here.
Dr. Beery? Here. Dr. LaCrone?
Here.
Dr. Mathers?
Here.
Mr. Schimmel?
Here.
Mr. Snell?
Here.
Mr. Ulmer?
Here.
And Mr. Young is absent.
I would invite those present to rise and join me in the pledge of the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, tonight we have, even though the agenda on paper doesn't look full, we've got a lot to do tonight. So this time I'll invite Mr. DiPaolo from Larson, Kellett and Associates to make his presentation for us.
I promise it'll be short unless you want me to make it long. Thanks for having us. I'm Randy DiPaolo from Larson, Kellett and Associates. We conduct what's called the local audit of Montoursville School District, and the main point of us coming is to make ourselves available to the board to ask, for you to ask any questions about the audit or the audit process or the audit report that you may have, and also to just quickly highlight the two main products of our audit that we give to the school district. The first is it's a required communication letter from us to the board that basically highlights that financial statement presentation and preparation involves estimates, and there are estimates in your financial statements, and it details the most significant estimates, which are mostly related to pension and benefit accruals that the school district has to account for and estimate in the financial statements. And the other item is the adoption of a new accounting standard that went into effect for the year under audit, which was June 30th, 21. It's referred to as GASB 84 fiduciary activities, and it's basically related to what are called your custodial funds, which is like your student activity funds for the most part. In the past, we only had to report upon the assets of the student activity funds. Now we have to include in our audit the revenues and the expenditures also. So they were really the two items that are in the communication to the board that I'd like to highlight: the estimates and also the adoption of the new accounting standard. The rest of it's basically boilerplate information that we're required to communicate to you. The audited financial statements themselves, we audit the financial statements of the school district, and we also audit the federal funds expended during the year. The financial statement audit has an unmodified opinion, which means that in our opinion, we believe that somebody can rely on the numbers in the financial statements to make a reasonable decision about the financial condition of the school district. In relation to the audit of the federal funds, this year we audited the COVID-19 Coronavirus Relief Fund. In total, the district expended about $2 million in federal funds, and the coronavirus relief funds accounted for about $578,000 of the total expended. And so that means we audited about 28% of the federal funds that you expended. We were only required to look at 20%, but that program made up 28%, so you have to look at a program in whole. So, and I think that is all that I really wanted to highlight. Do you have any questions about the letter or the audit report? I'll be happy to answer anything that you would like me to address.
Yeah, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
In your opinion letter, the basis for qualified opinion on COVID-19 coronavirus relief fund, you state as described in the accompanying schedule of findings and question costs. The district did not comply with requirements regarding assistant listing 21.019 COVID-19 coronavirus relief fund is described in finding number 2021-006 for activities. Allowed or unallowed and allowable cost principles. Compliance with such requirements is necessary, in our opinion, for the district to comply with the requirements to that program. Also in your findings, you have intentional or unintentional errors could occur and not be detected or corrected. But a knowledgeable individual, independent of the report preparation and input process, should review the report excuse me, and input for completeness and accuracy, and the review should be documented. And it also states in the report that there was $57,160, the amount the Lycoming County reimbursed the district related to lost revenue calculations for the COVID-19 coronavirus relief fund assistance listing. Question, first of all, did the administration give you an answer on how the problems you found were going to be alleviated?
Yes, they are required to do that before we can issue the audit report. They have to respond to all the findings. That is not included in our audit report. It is included, so there's it's called the data collection form where all the federal funds are reported to the federal government, and along with the data collection form and all the findings, a copy of the audit report and also management's response to the findings gets submitted to the federal government. And then it passes out to all of the entities that passed you money so they can examine any findings and see if they want to do anything about any of them.
Will that $57,160 have to be paid back to the county of Lycoming?
I cannot tell you that. I do not know. So that money came from the United States Department of Treasury. It was passed to Lycoming County, and Lycoming County passed it out. In the application to Lycoming County, which Lycoming County accepted and reimbursed for, there was a calculation for basically lost gate receipts that you weren't going to get because you couldn't conduct your sports programs. So some of the federal funding streams allowed for the concept of a lost revenue calculation. This particular funding stream, all the federal funding streams come with what's called an assistance listing number, and this particular assistance listing number has its own audit program that the United States government publishes, and in that audit program it references you back to the Department of Treasury, who passed this particular funding stream to the county and to the district, and it references back to what's called the Federal Register, which is a publication of the government Department of Treasury. And what it indicates in there is that although a broad range of uses is allowed, revenue replacement is not a permissible use of this particular funding stream. I can't tell you what they will do, if anything. All I know is what's in the audit program and the Department of Treasury regulations related to this. So I can't tell you that.
Let me ask you this. It was the county that released them funds to the district.
This is true.
So who will it be? The federal government? Could it be the federal government that requires it back, or the county?
It could be either.
Either.
Yeah. So when the district accepts responsibility for federal funds, you're obviously responsible for complying with the contracts and rules of whoever passes it to you. So in this case, it was the contracts and rules of the county, and then also you're responsible for the federal regulations related to it. And that's what we look at. If you get any federal funding, did it come directly through the federal government, or was it passed through? Because we have to look at the rules all the way back to the source. I mean, unfortunately, with these coronavirus funds, there was a lot of confusion, especially in the early days when they were throwing a lot of this money around. I can't say what will happen. I know that the DCED, which is the Pennsylvania Department of Economic and Community Development, did in one of their question and answer documents, did kind of warn counties that if they did something like this, it was at their own risk. So I once again, I can't say what, if anything, will happen. Unfortunately, auditing is, we gotta look at the trail and the rules, and all I can do is write what I see. I'm not the person that makes the determination. You know, they might do nothing about it. And it's not that anybody necessarily did anything wrong. It's possible these rules didn't even exist when the money was issued, but they exist when the audit process is happening, and it's all I have to look at, so.
Thank you. My next question is actually for you, Brandy. The recommendation that a knowledgeable individual, independent of the report preparation and input process, should review the report and input for completeness and accuracy, and the review should be documented. Has that been put in place for the future? And the other part of my question is, I seem to remember in a past audit where this same recommendation was made in an audit. I'm not 100% sure. I looked for it, couldn't find it. Maybe you can shed some light.
I haven't had any audit findings since I've been business manager, so I have not had that. So if it was prior to me, maybe, I don't know.
If I may interject, I believe it was in relation to a food service report at one point in time. Once again, it wasn't, we have to look at not only compliance, but what's called internal controls over compliance. So in relation to the reports that we're referring to here, reports were submitted for this federal program to the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. We didn't find any problems in the reports, so there was no compliance issue, but the federal government is very keen on what controls do you have in place to avoid potential problems. And one of the biggest controls that they want over any process is someone does it, you know, someone prepares the report or inputs something into the computer, and then somebody independent of that process checks it over. That's called internal control, and in this case, if it happened, it wasn't documented, and from an audit standpoint, if we don't see documentation, it didn't happen. So we're not saying that there was a problem with the reports, but there was no control in place for someone to review that. And that just increases the likelihood of error due to intentional errors or fraud or whatever, what you read out of the report there.
Right,
So,
it's
yeah.
a safety mechanism
Yeah.
to kind of protect against mistakes.
Yeah, it's like anything else. I mean, yeah, I'm sure everybody's seen those things where you like read something and you think it's perfect and you give it to somebody else and they find 3 problems with it because you have a different set of eyes looking at it. That's all that's related to. And unfortunately, with the federal funding, that's something they make us look at and make us report upon if we don't see it in place related to key reports and documents for the federal funds.
Thanks for your answer, I appreciate that.
You're welcome, that's why I'm here.
I guess following up on that, then that was posted in the Federal Register in January of 2021, so.
And there have been no updates to that, so.
If we've been looking to, and it looks like there's an interpretation of lost revenue is not the same as an expense, so even though it ends up, we ended up paying for those things regardless. So if that was submitted prior to that, I mean, I'm just trying to think of the timing sequence of things, because this would have been in the 2021 budget
We got that money in the fall of 2021. Like,
Okay. So when?
like probably October.
I'm just trying to think when we.
Or was it 2020? Oh, I'm sorry, 2020.
It was before that.
Yeah.
It was, because it was March 2020, so it would have been in the fall of 2020 we got the money.
Okay. And then it turns out that you probably shouldn't do that kind of thing being posted in the Federal Register.
Yeah, and that's where in your response, you can, you know, like I said, I can only report the rules that they refer me to. I'm not allowed to interpret them or make decisions upon them, but that's where in your response to the finding, for anybody that's gonna read it, you can say, hey, we got this money before we think the rules were written, or whatever the case may be. That's why you have the opportunity to respond to those, you know, especially if you don't agree with them, so.
And the county, and the instructions from the county
Right.
said that you could use it for revenue.
Yep.
So,
So,
For lost revenue.
yes, their county paperwork said that we could use it for that.
Randy, you'll be sharing your, the administrator's management responses.
Yep, I have everything here for later.
and they're actually, once the data collection form is filed, they're actually publicly available. Anybody can go look at those. Anybody that has federal funds, that has what's called a single audit, has to post their report and the data collection form and any responses out to the federal government website. So just as an aside on that.
Anyone else have anything?
I will,
The only other thing I have in regard to that is, when are we going to get the list of what the ESER's money, CARES money was spent on? When are we gonna get a list of that?
Well, the money's been posted, as far as the answers in that, that's just gonna be a matter of time, Lauren. There's a lot of information you just got to put together. I talked to someone about what the format of the report would be. I actually thought that you guys met with her, that would be one of the topics you might discuss. It sounds like you didn't get to that, so. I don't know what to tell you. It will happen. It's just not gonna be as timely as you'd wish, that's all.
that's obviously not a question for me, so.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. Anybody else have any questions? If you come up with some later, we're just down the street. You can call or stop in, whatever, so. All right, well, thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thanks, you too.
Before we move along, Sebastian, could you have them crank up the output volume that goes to the live stream? It's not coming through very loud on the outside. Okay, next is, well, it's not Scott Cousins. Scott had a previous engagement he just couldn't get away from, and so he's sent John Solarczyk from Pyramid Engineering to walk through the HVAC report on option 8. Give me a minute here to get set up. What I'm going to call up here is the report that Scott and I had put together regarding the elementary program that we've been working on for the past couple months. Let me grab it real quick here. Again, I'm John Solarczyk. I'm with Pyramid Engineering. I recognize some of the board members from when we did the high school project. We're still working with Scott on projects and very excited to be part of this one as well. Obviously, we have been going through some different iterations on the elementary program, combining different programming, combining schools, different architectural concepts in the different buildings. We were asked to come back with the last two options as part of the program was very basic renovations to the schools. We're talking about Valley and Leiter. And I just wanted to go through this real quick to kind of get everybody up to, I don't know if option 8, if Scott really got into any depth with you. He said he did present it, ran through it at the last board meeting, but he wanted me to come tonight and follow up with any questions or concerns you may have. Option 8 is basically strictly upgrading your heating and air conditioning system over at Loyalsock. And anything related to that, which would only be minor electrical upgrades, no technology, nothing architecturally, bare bones upgrade for your heating and air conditioning system. Things that we do, new units in the classroom, new exhaust fans, things that serve each individual classroom, as well as your office areas, your administration areas. Some of the electrical system that's out there hasn't been touched in a very long time, very little upgrades. But part of this project was just to support the HVAC equipment that will be going in. And on the electrical side, we're talking a new service to the building and a few panels to power electrical, or power heating and air conditioning. The only general construction that would be in this would be taking ceilings down, putting ceilings back up. Very basic option. Leiter, same thing. Leiter, replace the HVAC and any electrical upgrade that we would need to do as part of that HVAC upgrade. Leiter is not as extensive. It was renovated relatively recently, in '99, as compared to Valley. So electrically, it's a little more supportive for the HVAC equipment upgrades. But again, no general construction other than taking ceilings down, put them back up. Anything we need to do just for HVAC for the school. Here's some projected costs for the Valley and the Leiter for option 8. When you're looking at numbers, some things to consider when you do projects like this where it's not a complete renovation. The numbers increase a little bit on the HVAC and electrical numbers because you're not doing a comprehensive renovation where you're also having a general contractor come in and do work. So now we have to increase our costs to cover things such as cleanup, supervision, inspection, things like that. That cost the projects. Again, the benefits, low construction costs, and you keep both schools presently the way they are configured today. Some cons that go along with that. Obviously, you're not addressing any of the educational functionality needs in the school. Architecturally, nothing's changed. So these projects that we're looking at for this option, again, are 30-year plans, so it's significant time scale. when you're looking at the type of project. Again, some of the options that we did, just to summarize, some of the construction costs, obviously they're all different. All the different options have different programming in each building. Some are combining buildings, but you have a list of options. You have some construction budgets. In terms of option 8, where we're looking at just adding air conditioning, is there any questions, concerns?
Does it fix all of the electrical problems at Wellsville Valley when you're bringing in what you're telling us here?
No, this only addresses strictly your HVAC upgrades. Some other things that are to consider at the Valley is your receptacles you plug into the wall. That infrastructure is needed to be replaced 10 years ago. Panels that are over there, electrical panels are in the wall that serve the receptacles, should have been replaced 10 years ago. Some of the electrical components that are in the building you can't get parts for. So it's...
And you have no idea what that would cost to...
Specifically, we could look at that as part of this option 8. We didn't consider that. We were just trying to address the minimum cost.
I think when we were on the tour of the valley, Joe mentioned ideally like wanting to get the valley off of the oil due to the annual expenses of the oil, but none of those costs are included in this option 8 at this time. Is that correct?
It is. This is
included.
Yes. This is getting you off of,
Yeah.
away
Okay.
from.
So that's not an extra expense.
Yeah, this is heating and air conditioning with this all.
Okay, so no more of that $40,000 to $60,000 a year. Okay.
Right. Well, if it's a hot water, this terminal units are hot water for heating, how are we heating the water?
They're not hot water. They'll get it's a different type of unit, new technology.
Yeah, what we would do is convert everything over to a heat pump technology. When fossil fuels are available, natural gas is the best way to heat a building for us here in Pennsylvania. It's abundant, it's inexpensive. Fuel oil, we know the prices are very volatile. We try to get away from using fuel oil, and we try to use natural gas if it's relatively available. If not, next thing would be LP gas is an option. But with our current heat pump technology we have today, we're able to efficiently heat that building 4 times more efficient than we can with a fossil fuel. That makes your building all electric, but with the efficiencies and the type of equipment we have, it's very economical. And it gets you off of the fossil fuels.
If, let's say we just wanted to add cooling to stay with existing heating, so you have obviously 2 independent systems. In theory, that could drive the cost of the project down some, even though it may not be advisable to have 2 separate systems, but that, in theory, that's something that could be done, yes?
It can be done with the equipment that's out there. That equipment's year to year on your heating side. I wouldn't recommend that.
On a heat pump system, when the temperature gets down to a certain point, auxiliary heat has to kick in. Would the cost of, and they make heat pumps that the auxiliary system is a heating element. And they also make heat pumps that the auxiliary heat is LP, or natural gas. What was it priced out as with the electric backup or LP backup?
What I have in this budget for this option is a heat pump system that doesn't require any backup. It will operate down to minus 13 degrees and give you 100% heat.
Without a heating element kicking on?
Correct.
Okay. Then technology has.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's a technology that back when we did this school project, we did look at it. The problem when we did this school was there was very few manufacturers that were available to do it. The technology was there, but it was very proprietary, and the big cities had it, but we didn't have it here in this location. Rural locations, very difficult to get. So it's a system that was evaluated, but it was not, at the time when we did it, we couldn't get the equipment or the support. Today, this equipment is readily available. Contractors are very familiar with it. They've been putting it in for the better part of 10 years. So you not only have maintenance, you have parts and accessibility.
Can you go back to the beginning where it has a written description?
In this option, things to consider that it does address very well. So obviously, it's going to give you the proper ventilation in your classroom, the efficiency of the equipment. It's going to bring the heating and air conditioning system up. It's going to be very efficient, and you shouldn't have to do anything to the building for the next 30 years. It gets you off the fossil fuel.
What's an energy recovery wheel?
That's a device that we take the relief air, exhaust air out of the building. We bring outside area, and then you have to get it out of the building. Instead of just exhausting it out of exhaust fans, we take it through a media that transfers the energy from that exhaust air to the ventilation air coming into the building to temper that air. So you don't just throw all that preconditioned air that we put into the building. You recover some of that energy back and preheat your air coming into the building, your ventilation air.
The terminal units overhead, or are they based along the walls like they are now, or how's that constructed?
These types of systems, they're overhead. There's multiple configurations that you can do with these types of systems. They can be above the ceiling in a classroom. They could be out in a corridor. They can be surface mounted in the classroom. Like here, we try to eliminate any mechanical noise in the classroom. So we try to either keep it out in a corridor or get it above the ceiling where it's not inhibiting the education in the classroom.
Did you just say the life expectancy was 30 years?
Yes.
Can you scroll down into lighter?
If you move the size of the valley, how many units would be up on the
maybe 2 DOAS units and maybe 4 or 5 condensing units about as big as this.
So, there'd only be, maintenance could only control the heat in 2 different zones then?
No.
Every room,
Every room would have its own control.
Oh, okay.
And what's nice about these systems too, they have their own control, but some of the things that goes on in these systems, we talked about the energy recovery wheel. In these types of systems, we pump refrigerant through the building, and you could have one room that's heating, another room that's cooling, and they use the same refrigerant, so you're really rejecting heat within your building. It's not even leaving the building because it's going through the refrigeration system.
What is the refrigerant?
R410?
That's all we're allowed to use now, right?
Yeah.
And the lighter says, second paragraph says, new heating boilers, hot water heating system piping and pumps. That's where I was thrown by the need for, still need to have a hot water system. Why is lighter different than what Loyal's thought would be? Or is that accurate? I mean,
Yeah. The reason we looked at that was you have natural gas at that building. So we can use boilers that are, again, very efficient, 99%. But the cost for natural gas is still very favorable to use. And it's going to be for the next 30 years. I mean, we've got an abundance of gas here. So when you have it in the building already, it's very difficult to show an economic analysis where you can't use natural gas for heating, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Is that a cheaper system than the all-electric one?
What's nice about this system, you already have some of that infrastructure in there, the hot water piping, things like that, that we think we can reuse. So you're saving some money there. When you compare a all-new piping system, hot water system with a heat pump system, the heat pump system is going to be less expensive because you don't have as money, you don't have to put piping in, you don't have to put all these other devices in and controls.
questions, board? All right, I guess you answered all the questions, or we don't even know what questions to ask yet, I guess. So, thank you very much.
No, we wanted to make sure we all understood option 8 along with all the other options. And if you have any questions, reach out to us. Yeah.
This time we'll have Ken Phillips from Raymond James provide some information on financing.
Thank you, Mr. Schimmel. It's a pleasure to be here. For those who have not had a chance to meet yet, I've had the pleasure of working with Montoursville since the mid-1980s. In that time, we've been with 2 firms, and we recently left RBC Capital Markets, my whole Lancaster team, and went to work for Raymond James, who's pretty active throughout the state on some wealth management things. Just a different letterhead and same people doing the same thing. So it's a pleasure to be here. We've had a chance to talk to Brandy a lot with respect to the presentation that you just heard. And our role this evening is really to maybe show you some financial analysis on, I think, 4 of the options that are under consideration. So we will get to that here momentarily. Do not hesitate to stop me during the presentation, though, for any questions that you may have. So I'll wait till the presentation gets up. I think I did put in front of everybody the handout. Do you need one, Mr. Youngkin? You good? But also it's going to be up on the screen. Brandon, if you want to go to the, are you controlling? There we go. First slide. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So let's just review a little bit where we are. Really, the debt you have outstanding is for the building we're standing in now. Okay, that was work that was done back in 16 and 15 and 17. We've had some refinancings that have taken place since that point in time in terms of saving some dollars, just like refinancing a home mortgage. But when you look at the page 2 here, this is the gross debt service before any type of state reimbursement that comes your way. So we have the 16 bonds, the 19 bonds, and the 20 bonds. Over the last couple of years, we've had bank loans, we've had bonds, whatever is the best vehicle at the time. That's what we use. So on any future financings, we'll be doing the same thing. We'll be taking a look at the general obligation bond market and the general obligation bank market for you. The average rates for these are very, very attractive. You have 3.32 on the 2016 bonds. You have 2.54 on the 2019 bonds and 2.39 on the 2020. It's all very, very attractive, especially with the rate environment that we're all seeing and more than likely is going to happen over the next year plus. You can see when you look at the summaries at the bottom, remaining principal outstanding. So you have about $35.5 million outstanding, with respect to the principal. That goes down every year. You see something called the call date. Call date is when we can take the bonds officially out of the market. Doesn't mean we can't do something in advance if it makes sense. Based on the rates you have now, it may not, we may not have that opportunity. And then you can see that the state has shared in the debt service costs for the high school. About 8.75 cents on the dollar comes back to you in the form of reimbursement. So that hits your budget on the revenue side under receivables from the state. On a gross basis, far right-hand column, column 5, you're about $3.3 million. Okay? You've paid off some debt in the last couple of years with your cash. You're familiar with the resolutions that Brandy has provided to you, and we've been up here talking about self-directed refundings, and you've saved a lot of interest doing that because of some of your cash positions. The next slide is the net debt service, and if you just look at the far right-hand column, you'll see it's about $300,000 a year difference in the previous column. So the state's picking up about $300,000 a year, giving back to you with respect to your project for the high school. So now we get into, we have several options based off of what Brandy shared with us in terms of potential projects that you've looked at and some of the options that you're considering. So you take a look at the heading here. This is really just a very simple illustration for option 1 and 3. $18 million project, of which the district has about $3 million of your own funds that you're going to be, putting toward the project, which is very admirable. So that results in about $15 million in borrowings. Now we haven't, when you go to column 2, the green column, we haven't broken this out. Maybe we do some money at the end of 22 or sometime in 22. Maybe we do some money then in 23. The timing and the actual structure will, come further down the road as you start to narrow down what your choices are going to be. But in order to compare apples to apples, we just kept everything very simple tonight in terms of making the assumption when you look at the footnotes at the bottom Then on column 2, the green column, we're gonna get $15 million. It's gonna be done sometime about a year from now. The average rate is gonna be 3% yield, which is current rates plus 0.75%. And when we met with Brandy about 2 weeks ago, that was the contingency. We always put a contingency in. That is about 0.5% today. We've lost that much in just in the last 2 weeks with what's going on. But again, some contingency. So the very first column, column 1, that's your existing debt from the previous page. Okay? And we would recommend the same type of structure as we use in the past. It's called a wraparound financing, where we take the green column here, and the first 10, 12 years or so is nothing but interest expense pretty much, and then you start to pay off your principal. Under Act 1, this is pretty much how districts finance things, okay? And you can see the estimated cost based on that. We have a column that we don't have anything in tonight, less school district reserves or capitalized interest or interest earnings. We may use some funds to go ahead and phase things in. Gives you your new debt obligation of $3.6 million on a net basis. And so how would you get that? We show it in dollars and we show it in mils. So column 5 is you need to come up with this amount of money in your budget in order to go ahead and pay for this type of project. So 100,000 in 22-23, and then 200,000 in 220. And then for those who want to equate that to mils, we do that in column 6. So it's 0.12, 0.24, 0.27. All right. Now again, once decisions are made on what you're going to do, we would refine this, and maybe we only get part of the money in 22 or 23, and then get the balance thereafter. So columns 5 and 6 are going to change a little bit more than likely, but it just gives you a feel as you start to plan and start to decide, where you go. This is option 1 and option 3, totaling about 18 million, but 15 million after your use of your own funds. So the next is option 8 that was just reviewed with you. So this is the HVAC work at both Loiter and Loyalstock. So spreadsheet's the same. You can see now column 2, less in payback because it's a smaller number. So this is a $10 million project, but you're only going to borrow 7. And you can see the new budgeted dollars in column 5, and then the new mills in column 6. Now this does not take into consideration any type of savings you may have. Like on the previous slide, you may have some operational savings, with one of the options, I think option 3. So, that does not take that into consideration. That's something Brandy can speak to. Next slide is option 2, which is a $23 million project, $20 million in borrowing. Again, we would definitely split out column 2 and probably have 2 different borrowings. But now you can see that the dollars are 200, 250, 250, 0.24, 0.3, 0.3. And obviously all these projects that you've studied, they do different things for the educational program, for the energy program, and so on. So those are the 3 options with respect to what you were reviewing. Page 7 is just an idea of where rates are. Rates are going higher, but what this shows is since 1993, the blue line right in the middle, dark blue line, that's the average of rates since 1993. You have the rates on the left, and at the bottom of the axis you have the years. The red is where we are as of 2 weeks ago. It's slightly higher today. And rates are still attractive, even though they're not where they were back, obviously, when we did some of the refundings in 20 and 19. And if you took just your pencil and drew a line at the top of the vertical blue, baby blue line, and at the bottom, those are the all-time lows and highs since 1993. Okay? And then we just listed, with our change, listed some material on Raymond James. Raymond James is a top 10 firm in the country, just like RBC was. Very active in the middle market. You can see our staff. You can also see there's a Montoursville office, Williamsport office. Those are mainly wealth management offices. Okay? but they have 150 different offices throughout the state. That's important really for the type of business we do, is it's very mid-market. You know, most of the financings that I've been doing this for 41 years, since 1981. And most of the financings that we do are in that $1 to $100 million range, okay? It's scary that the very first elementary school I ever financed in 1982 was $2 million. And that is now 30-some million dollars. But Raymond James is very strong in K-12. They're in the top 5 in the country with respect to K-12. So with that, I'll stop and maybe get back to some of the schedules, or talk a little bit about whatever you'd like to talk about, markets, or you know, where you go from here.
One page says, I'm just asking you where the mistake was made. Was it made up at the top that showed the mills, or was it made adding up the mills? Because .30, .30, and .24 doesn't equal .85.
It's probably just rounding, Mr. Snell.
Okay, so it's
that's all. It's
.84 then?
Yes, yeah. It's just a rounding in terms of how we have it.
You're only showing 2 significant digits in the decimal.
That's the thing. That's why it's rounding. I mean, if you really went through column 2 and really spelled it out to the value of the mill, it could be .242, you know, something of that nature. So, that's all. And if you didn't have a question, I'd be disappointed, Mr. Snell.
Well, I have a question.
Okay, that's good. That's what I'm here for.
What's going on in the market?
Market's not happy. You know, we've been through lots of markets. Historically, if you go to that one, maybe page 7, I think it is, Randy. Historically, rates are still very attractive. The Fed has indicated that they're going to increase rates 5 or 6 more times at 0.25% increments. They may do a 0.5% increment. They may do just a bunch of 0.25s. That's going to happen throughout the balance of this year, and then more than likely another 3 or so the following year. At least that's what's on paper. You never know what happens, i.e. Russia, Ukraine. You can't predict things of that material. And so that the increases could stop if there is a significant recession, significant war, or in order to get inflation, and someone here earlier today mentioned gas pump, all you got to do is take a look at what inflation is. We're going to see major food cost increases. Ukraine is one of the top producers on the agricultural side, and they distribute globally, and they're 3rd or 4th like in the world in some of the production. So we're going to see significant inflation, and the only way to really break inflation is to raise rates. Are we going to be back to 1981 when rates were 20%? I don't think so. Paul Volcker, who was the Fed chairman at that time, took rates from 10% to 20% in 1 year. And that was to break double-digit inflation. It caused a recession in 1981 and 1983. So do I think we're going to see measures like that? No. But I do think you're going to see the Fed increase rates. Okay, now, so what does that mean to you? On a $10 million issue over 20 years, on a level debt basis, it's about $600,000. An increase of 0.5%, 0.5%, is about $650,000 of interest cost to you. So an increase of 1%, obviously you double that. So with rates projected to go up another 1.5%, okay, depending on what option you look at here, you're probably looking at between $1 million and $1.5 million potentially higher of interest expense. Now we've just enjoyed some pretty nice years when we did refundings in 19 and 20 when you did the high school financing even, okay, back in 16, 17, 8, you know, and that time period. Rates are really low. I mentioned at the very beginning, and we're gonna add that to the bottom of your sheet, the average rate. You know, you range from, you know, 2.4 to roughly 3.4. That's pretty good for $35 million, okay? So how do you get ahead of the curve? And we're asked this question all the time. When we talk to Brandy, I think it's important that if the district is committed to any one of those projects, so the low goes from really 7 million net after your contribution up to 20 million. Based on what's going on, it may make sense to try to go out and see if we can secure some, maybe some financing. If it's a bank loan, maybe get a drawdown schedule, like a construction draw, and maybe lock in rates today for money that you're probably gonna take out over the next couple of years. Because the timing of these projects, we're showing April of 23. You know better than I do what, you know, when you're gonna implement the projects. But I would not hesitate, in my experience of seeing 4 decades of markets, to say, if I can get ahead of the curve on part of your money, not all of it, but maybe hedge your bets a little bit to go ahead and see what we can secure from a rate standpoint today. And if we don't do anything, that's fine and dandy, but I do think when I'm standing here 6 months from now, 9 months, a year, or whatever it's gonna be, you're gonna see that contingency we had built in here is gonna be pretty much eroded. And then the question is, how much above the contingency? We already lost a quarter in the last 2 weeks, okay? So I do think we're gonna lose it gradually throughout the rest of the year. And then we'll be eating into, okay, now the costs are just gonna go higher a little bit. But relatively speaking, still historically low on the interest rate curve. And are we getting back to 1981 when prime was 20 and mortgages were 20? No, we're not getting back there. But we're gonna see rates higher than we've had the last decade plus. So I would not hesitate to say, if you're committed to any one of those projects, and you know that you need at least 7 million, that's the lowest cost option. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to look at trying to lock some of that in. And depending how we do it, if we can do it on a drawdown or something, then you don't have any expense until you draw it down, but you could be locking in rates lower the next year at this time.
It's a lot to think about.
Mm-hmm.
If you get that drawdown loan and you never use it, is there any sort of penalty?
No, you have 3 years to spend the money when you draw it, or when you incur debt.
Okay.
So you would be incurring it technically, but if you don't draw it down, you don't draw it down. But let's say that you do draw it down, okay? Or you don't draw it down until 18 months from now, all right? Now, most of the time, the drawdown, which really would be through a bank, and we would have to weigh the cost, you know, there's going to be a little premium to the drawdown more than likely because rates are going higher, right? So someone's going to say, I'm not going to give you a year drawdown without having some cushion in for me. So we would have to weigh all that out. Probably the longest drawdown you would get would be 2 years, and then they would start to force you to probably draw the money down. But if you don't use it, okay, and total answer to your question, if you do not use the money at all, then really it was the cost to you to do the transaction. It's a settlement cost. It's the lawyer's fees, it's our advisory fee, it's a bank fee if they charge you anything. Okay, that's really the cost of it. But that would be offset a lot from the rising rates on the investment side, if you drew it down,
No, we had a drawdown for this project.
Yeah, we had 3 loans. I think one of them was a drawdown, yes.
So I think it was the last one, maybe?
I can't remember without the files, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, the high school funding turned out to be very, very good. When you take a look at the building that you have and your average cost, let's say, is 2.75, maybe 2.75%. And the state's picking up roughly a quarter of that, so really your true cost is about 2.5. which if I was here saying I can get you 2.5 today, you'd be really happy. I'm not sure we can.
So, help me visualize, so what happens if we do the option 8 now, which is the least expensive, but then in 5 to 7 years, we have to loop back and hit especially all the valley improvements that will need to be done at that point.
Okay.
So what, so you do your, what did you say, 8 million, you're 7 million borrowing now, but like in 5 to 7 years,
When you need to
we
do
have to
the
go
balance
back
of the
to
project?
option 2.
Yeah, then what we do is we would need, borrow whatever, I'm assuming in option 2 has obviously option 8 incorporated in it. I mean, I'm making that assumption.
Right.
Okay.
I just-
Yeah,
So
or,
then you do like 20 million minus
yeah.
7.
Yeah.
You're borrowing
Or-
an additional 13 million.
and whatever the cost increases are at that point. Okay, because you're gonna have in, one, and again, I'm not a contractor, but the cost of construction, I'll look to you guys, okay? Cost of construction 5 years from now is gonna be obviously greater than it is today. So maybe that 13 million becomes 15 million, I have no idea. But it's obviously more expensive.
Can you borrow the max? Can you borrow the max 20 million?
Yeah, you could, as long as you have a bona fide project and you stipulate that to, legal documents, you can borrow it all, okay? I mean, it really depends on what project you're gonna do. But yeah, I mean, as long as you have a project, you can borrow whatever you wanna borrow, up to that project cost. Yeah.
I mean, Joe, you were meaning like borrow it all now?
Borrow it at the low interest rate now, withdraw down. It's cheaper than if you had to go back and get 10 million, so 5 years from now.
But we don't have a
Drawdown
project
for-
specified.
Right.
Drawdown's only gonna be for 10 million or less.
Right.
Yeah,
'Cause
that'd be the
that's
max.
a big loan.
Yeah, that'd be the max.
Two drawdowns.
You only have one in a year, a
Correct.
calendar year.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah,
Boo-hoo.
yeah.
So we could take one in
22.
22 and then take another one in January of 23 if
Yeah.
we wanted.
Mhm.
We could do December and then
You could.
January, because that's what we did with
Yes, that's correct.
our refinancing.
Yeah, that's correct.
And it's a no-brainer that the construction costs always go up, right? I mean, you could probably.
Yeah, I mean, and lately, lately costs are going through the roof. We just had the second athletic facility bid, again, we don't do the bidding, project was 8 million, now it's 11 million.
But even though they're high now, they're gonna be higher 5 years.
You would
7 years
think,
from now.
you would think so, yes, you would think so.
Imagine, okay.
Yeah, you would think so.
Help me understand something. For the option A, the new budget dollars needed is 225,000. Okay?
So page 5, Mr. Snow, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
225,000, and for that, we need an increase of 0.27 mils.
mhm,
Now, project 1 and 3 on page 4, that needs 520,000 new dollars,
mhm.
yet, which is less than double, well. a
Well, no,
little
it's-
over- It's a little bit over
yeah,
double.
yeah.
But yet, we need 0.63 mils for that.
Which is a little more than double as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah. And and I believe one of the options, correct, Brandy, you do have some savings, not knowing,
If we were to close the valley.
okay, so you have operational savings, right, which is not shown in here, these
No.
numbers at all.
Now, on the drawdown, you say you have 2 years. Do you have 2 years to draw it all down, or do you have 2 years to start the drawdown?
No, most of the answer is yes. You have, some banks will give you a drawdown, will say you must draw it all down within a certain time. Others say you must begin the drawdown in a certain
And
time.
that's what I'm asking.
It depends. I mean, I can't give you an answer until it depends on what we receive. And depending on this market, you may not even receive that option,
Right.
okay?
And the
But-
reason why I asked that is, did you say the maximum on a drawdown loan is 10 million?
10 million and less means it's bank qualified, meaning banks will have an interest in it. Because they get a certain tax benefit if it's 10 million or less. Mhm. But as you continue to deliberate the project, just keep in one side of the brain where the value of where rates are. Okay? You know, it doesn't, you know, you obviously will make a decision on the project. And if it's any one of these three that we looked at tonight, option-wise, you know the high is 7 and 20 in terms of what you need. So then the question is, does it make sense to try to lock in today's relative market versus next year's relative market?
So, another question, if we get a drawdown and we went out for 9.95 like we usually do, and excuse me, option 8 was selected and we only needed 7, we would just draw down.
Draw down 7.
Okay.
Mhm.
What's the interest rates do during a recession?
They will, yes. The question is, they're going down from what level?
True.
Yeah. I mean, if you talk about the severity of what happened in 2008 with the financial crisis, rates fell to about 1%. And then after COVID, they fell to 0. Okay. So the answer is they will come down during a recession, because what happens in a recession, the Fed has to lower rates. And what needs to happen is the Fed has to find what is, it's sort of the three little bears. You know, it's just what is that perfect temperature, you know, and you know, so on. So rates will be lower in a recession. The question is, where does it start from? Does it start from 5 and go to 3? Does it start from 3 and go back to 1? Yeah. Well, as you continue to study this, you know, we'll obviously be in touch with the administration. They'll be in touch with us. We can move as fast or as slow as you want. I think tonight was just a good chance to get these numbers in front of you, talk a little bit about the market, and, you know, have you then weigh on where you want to go from here.
Anyone else have anything?
It's always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, move on to item 3 in the agenda for time for public comment, and residents and taxpayers may come forward and comment any matters of concern or action or anything we're deliberating. We'll give you 3 minutes, 3 unpaused, 3-minute time frame.
I'll get this out of the way.
I'm gonna come get you.
Jack Callahan, 113 Arch Street, Montoursville, PA. Yeah, I had some comment on the class play. My friend went with his wife and 2 kids, and he said he would have easily paid $20 to see it. He loved it, and I'd like to see the newspapers do a little bit more. I know down there in Harrisburg, they list every school's class play, and it's very interesting to see what class plays the schools are doing. Maybe somebody wants to go, and I've talked to people outside my house, and there's people from Williamsport that come down here to see our plays and all that, and I just think it should or could be a little publicized. I didn't even know it was this past weekend. I saw the parking lot pretty full, and I forgot that it was this weekend. So, yeah, so I think the paper could do a little bit more advertising when these class plays at these different schools are, and it's interesting to see what different, some schools do the same plays as the other. And about this deal with I read that Jersey Shore, Southern Columbia, and South Williamsport, you know, about how many students that they have in order to keep at their level of class, like Southern Columbia AA, Jersey Shore 4A, and South Williamsport dropped down to 1A. But I mean, that's a touchy situation, but it only involves grades 9 through 12. And that, and you know, about us adding students or whatever, I mean, it doesn't matter. If they're, I mean, if it's elementary, it doesn't count. So, but I mean, it's a touchy situation because Jersey Shore and Southern Columbia fought to remain in the same thing they were. And I'd like to mention that we did well in wrestling at the states. We had a state champ, a second place, and I think a fifth place. And I don't know if anything was done or whatever, but I wish there was something done. I don't know about perks and comps. Some of these people we hire, I don't know, some should get perks and comps maybe. I don't know if they do that in the school system, but you know, I don't see anything wrong with it. You know, you don't buy them cars or country club membership or whatever. So, but whatever. Yep.
Not yours.
Brenda O'Brien, 192 Woodland Court. I just wanted to say about heat pumps, they've never done us any good. And from what I was hearing him say is you're gonna spend more money early on, and if you did the gas, and wait, let me try to think how he said that. You're gonna spend more money on installing the gas one, but over time you're gonna save money. That was my understanding, so I'm hoping you stay away from the heat pumps. And also with the man that was loaning money, and then the other guy that, you know, the architect, and he's pushing for a bigger plan. I think they make more money the bigger the plan that they sell you. So that's kind of what I'm hearing from them, and I hope we take that into consideration, that there is a financial benefit for them to sell you the biggest plan. Thank you.
Good evening, distinguished board and respected staff. Scott Metzger on Weldon Street, and I've just returned from Harrisburg. And the theme that I had heard down there, which we heard last fall, is we need to tighten our belts. That's coming straight from the State House and Senate. Monies are extremely tight. We are on the verge of World War III. Ukraine provides a lot to our country. They provide 50% of our wheat. They provide a lot of other services. Our food's going up, our fuel's going up. Everything in life is timing and communication. I'm concerned that our district is $35.5 million in debt. A school district this size. And we're talking about a plan for another $10 to $41 million that people can't afford. We elect you to hold the line and be fiscally responsible. I was elected to do the same. I hear from constituents every day, I cannot afford any more taxes. You need to draw the line. Back in October of 2020, the commissioners received $10.2 million in care monies. We thought of the school districts first. The reason being is we wanted to keep the kids in school and parents working. We gave each student $200 per student across the district, or across the county, excuse me. $3.1 million of that $10.2 million went to the school districts. This school district received $388,000. I then wrote an email to every superintendent in this county asking them to put it on their websites how they spent those monies. I came to this board every month asking where it was at. I was assured it was gonna be put on the website. I was assured. We went from October till June when it was finally put on the website. And I was told it was on tablets. The money was spent on tablets. Only to find out yesterday in an email to me in Harrisburg that $57,160 of it was spent on lost revenue for sporting events. And it may not be an allowable expense, which we'll dig into that tomorrow. I'll be meeting with the other two commissioners, and I will also be meeting with CEDACOG to find out whether those monies are allowable or whether to be paid back. I want to know who makes the determination of how these monies are spent from this board, whether it's the superintendent, whether it's the business manager, who's responsible for that, and whether it's voted on by the board. Every one of those expenses, whether they're ESSER expenses, or whether they're CARES money, or whether it's your ARPA money. We vote on it as a board of commissioners. We make it transparent. We make sure that everybody sees where that money's going. These are federal tax dollars that we have to make sure. And if we're not sure of whether it's an expense that's allowable, we're going to ask that question 10 times before we spend those monies. So I'm not going to question your judgment on whether that money was spent appropriately, but I am going to question whether it's going to be repayable and whether it was allowable. Because we're living in times right now, we have to be more responsible with these monies. Because our kids and grandkids are paying them back. It's not free money. And that debt that I see up there, we're going to be paying that for a long time. So I ask, and I'll continue to ask, you have a very tough decision. There's 8 options there. We have tough decisions uptown, same thing. I ask you to work together and you do what's fiscally responsible for every taxpayer in this district. Because as they knock on doors, as they call me every day on the phone, they cannot afford any more in taxes. Especially with inflation at 10%, going higher, the times we're living in are dangerous times. They can't afford any more. So I thank you for your time, and I ask you to please be more transparent and answer these questions that I asked tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, not seeing anybody else approaching the podium. We'll move now to the action items for the night. And under the general items, so we have G1, the approval of the revised 2022-2023 school calendar, our second and final reading. Do we have a motion on that?
Motion to approve.
There's, who's that second, Dennis? Okay, thanks, Ron. All right, any questions? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. G2, approval to appoint Jessica Breon to the MASD Foundation Board as a faculty representative, and she'll replace Mrs. Logue. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. G3, approval of the purchase of cafeteria tables at a price of $28,725 for Leiter and C.E. McCall Middle School. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Questions?
Are we replacing broken tables? What are we doing here?
Our tables at, later are over 20 years old. We can't get parts from anymore. And it is hard to lift the tables up and put them down, to clean under them. It's going to end up being a workers' comp eventually, because someone's gonna get hurt doing it. They're very old, and the cafeteria fund account cannot be profitable, and we were profitable last year, and we have to spend down some of those funds, so.
This is coming from there.
This is all out of,
Okay.
it's a cafeteria
Okay,
purchase.
very good.
And then McCall, they had, they need 2 more tables, so only 2 of the tables are for McCall. The rest of them are replacing all the ones at Slater.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. G4, approval of for professional employees providing instructional services outside of the school day between March 7, 2022 and April 14, 2022 to be compensated at an hourly rate of $31 per hour. Total cost not to exceed $1,250 to be paid out of the ARP ESSER's 7% set-aside funds for the purpose of after-school programming. That's a long motion. All right. Do we have a motion to approve that?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions?
Is that hourly rate, the going rate in the area of $31 an hour?
That's the next contract rate, correct?
Yeah, that's the next contract rate.
MAEA.
Currently, the rate is 25, and then July it goes to 31.
And that cost not to exceed $1,250 is total? That's not per person, is it?
It's, the way I understood it, that she explained it to me, it's the difference between 25 and 31, because they would give the 25, so it's $6 an hour is what that $12.50 represents.
This is for the homework club and those programs, or?
Yeah, middle school's running them, and high school is too.
Was this submitted at $25 an hour? Is that why? this
The
difference
current
is-
rate in the current contracts is $25 an hour.
So when application was made for the funds, who have used that figure?
I can't answer that, I don't know
I don't
for
know
sure.
anybody was included on that,
Oh,
to be able to answer that.
So the $25 an hour was budgeted for, and the increase wasn't budgeted for, is that what you're saying?
No, I think it was budgeted, I'm not 100% sure, just so I'm being clear here. My understanding is it's budgeted at the $31 an hour, but
In the current budget?
for the ARP ESSER 7%.
This is the district's budget, this is that ARPS.
Okay.
So, but this motion has to be made because we're currently in the current contract paying $25 an hour.
So the ESSERS is paying the excess.
31. They'd be paying the 31.
All right. Well, we all know that the one thing we've seen is that we've gotten behind, and this after-school programming is an opportunity for kids to catch up. So, I mean, this is one of the key places ESSER's money is to be spent, is to help us catch up. So, we may not totally understand the mechanics of this, but we know the program is a necessity. So, there's no more questions or discussion then. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, moving on to personnel. I propose to bundle P1, P3, P4, and P5, if you don't mind. Just for the sake of time, they're pretty, I guess, benign, you might say, pretty straightforward items. So, P1's the approval of the support staff, Shalia Aki at $12.50 an hour, and P3 is approval of a guest teacher, Benjamin Landon. P4 is approval of Gary Evans as a football volunteer coach. And then P5, unfortunately, is a resignation of Darren Tall from the business office. So I entertain a motion to approve P1, 3, 4, and 5.
Move to approve.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, any questions? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And P2 is approval of a substitute support staff for the balance of the school year. Amanda Flegger as a paraprofessional. And do we have a motion to approve? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and we'll, well, actually, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstains? Okay, all right. Okay, all right. And under transportation, approval of the transportation contracts for July 1, 2022 to June 30, 2027. And you saw the contracts, and they're all the same, just different companies. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions, discussion?
Yeah, I got questions. First of all, I'd like to know why these contracts are to pay over the state formula, 2% the first year and 1% the next 4 years. And second of all, these contracts say that if they get a guaranteed compensation for at least 175 days, even if they're not running, we would not get any reimbursement from the state if they're not hauling kids for those mileage that they're charging us for. And third, in the event of a closure or remote learning due to an epidemic, the district agrees to pay the contractor 50% of the daily rate for the days that are affected that contract year. That also, we would not receive any state compensation for. And fourth, I want to bring it to everybody's attention. I understand the fourth comment I'm going to make. If fuel costs should rise above $5 per gallon, the district pays 50% of the amount that it exceeds $5. I can understand that. I cannot understand these other guarantees. And the way, first of all, in this contract, districts shall pay an increase over state formula of 102%. That needs to be reworded even if this does pass, because we're not paying 102% over state formula. We would only pay 2% over state formula. So that wording would need to be changed in the first place. But with the way this economy's going, with the way people are going to be struggling, let's face it, increases in the way inflation's going, people are struggling, and to give the contractors money for work that's not being done for the district when we can't even get the state reimbursement for that, so the taxpayers would be liable for it all. That's all I got.
Randy, can you tell us what the other districts pay their transportation? They're paying above the state formula, are they not? I believe I was saying.
Share that information with you in exec session.
Okay.
But I can grab it here.
While you're getting through that, Brandy, I understand what Ron's saying, and we're sort of in a position where, one, we know we have good contractors. We know that they do things that your typical company, corporate bus company is not gonna do. These people do that extra for us. Everything from assisting the district in assessing the condition of highways in the early mornings and coordinating with the superintendent as to, is it safe out there to be driving on these roads, and things like that, just, you know, those extras that they give us. The 175 days guarantee, if we ever needed to, if they needed to invoke that, that's because something really bad has happened. Really bad has happened to the district, or the nation, or the state, or the economy, or something like that. It's a crisis situation, I think, to run into that, and you know, do we want to bus, or do we want to get our kids to school? I mean, that gives them, to me, it gives them a warm, fuzzy feeling, if you will. I don't see it ever being invoked. I think there's such a low probability of it being invoked. That's why I'm not afraid of it. But it is kind of, you know, on the surface, it looks pretty juicy, but I don't see it happening. There being need to be invoked. Even with being out of school due to pandemic and that, I think we're at a really low probability stage where we aren't going to have to play that game anymore. I think it's past. Yeah, so I'm not afraid of that happening either. Really, no, I don't like it being in there either one. I'm with you, but I'm not afraid of it.
Dave, I understand what you're saying, totally. I totally understand what you're saying, but we can't financially afford to run this district on ifs. We don't know what's going to happen down the road, but I will say this, I'd be willing to bet money if the state says no in-person learning like they did in 2019-20, I'd be willing to bet that they don't do like they did and said you have to pay your contractors and we'll still reimburse you, because that's not going to happen again.
I agree.
I do agree with Ron. I mean, that wording, increase over the state formula should just say 2%.
Yep.
The 2%, I mean, we can just say here that it would be the 2%. That's something, it went through 3 of us and no one caught it. But it should be paid at 102%, and then 1% increase. It shouldn't have the increase of 2%.
It's just, yeah, something about the word.
Yes, so we can, and they understand that that's what it is, and we understand that, so we can do a quick edit on that.
As far as with that, and I think Ron asked for the amount, was it $14,000?
Correct.
Is that going to be outside of any state reimbursement then?
No, so then there'd be, yeah, that would be outside. It's a 14, yeah, that would be a $14,000.
So the only thing that the state will consider reimbursable is what's covered by the formula?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so.
And if I may,
Yep.
I also think that wording about the guarantee of 175 days, I wish there was some other way of addressing that. I mean, saying basically that the contract, you know, there would be discussion should the district shut down for extended periods of time, or negotiate with them in terms of what that guaranteed time would be, and look more on guaranteed days off. Meaning we'll pay them, you know, 10 days. I mean, this would say out of 180 days, we'll pay them up to 5 days, even though they don't travel.
Okay. Can I just go back to some of those comments? Okay. So in regards to the contractors doing a lot more, I can give you an example that I had on Sunday. Sunday at 5 o'clock, I get a text message that says, hey, just want to let you know Hare Hill Road is closed. I don't know how that's going to affect your bus run tomorrow, if it's going to be closed tomorrow, what's going on with it. So I reached out to a contractor and said, that has that bus route, and said, hey, I just got this information, I don't know what the case is, I don't know what's going on, but I wanted to give it to you because we may have to do an emergency reroute in the morning. That contractor jumped in their vehicle and headed to Care Hill Road. In the meantime, I got a text message that said that, with the exact location of it, and said that a tree was down on lines there. So, I forwarded that information on, they went out, checked it, yes, it's closed. A bus cannot travel over roads that are marked closed. So, we had set up a plan for in the morning because it didn't look like anyone was working on it. So we had set up a plan, and we had a plan of action for in the morning that was able to be prepared ahead of time. But at 5 o'clock in the morning, I get another text, hey, I just went out and checked, Care Hill Road is still closed. We're gonna have to go ahead with that plan of action. So the contractor then got up in the morning and went out and checked Care Hill Road again to make sure it wasn't open, so that we weren't doing an extra run, because we had to run an extra bus to get all the kids to school in a timely manner that morning. So those are just some of the little extra things, and you may think that they don't happen a lot, but they happen more frequently than what you realize. Trees down, just little things, bridges, they close a bridge, or it's just the odd things that we run into that are just, they always help with, and they're great with snow and checking the roads and stuff. The reason for the day guarantee is because last year, with bank loans, that is something that the banks want to see in their contract as a day guarantee, so that they have some source of what their revenue is going to be in order to give bank loans for buses. So that was why they're asking for the day guarantee. What was the other thing?
Meaning the bank won't give the loan for the new school buses needed?
Yes, because they
that's
want
in-
to know how many days they're guaranteed to have revenue for.
Well, I just want everybody to keep in mind that an independent truck driver that owns a truck and is subcontracted to a company to make so many runs, and his truck breaks down, and it's in the shop for 1 or 2 weeks, that company doesn't pay him for those trips that he hasn't made. And just because it's taxpayers' money doesn't mean that we should be paying people for services that aren't rendered.
They would still be, the school's still open, so they would still be making the trips. They would be making the trips with a different bus.
No, I'm not saying the buses break down. I'm talking about a service that is being paid for and not being done. If the school is closed for some reason and they don't get their 175 days, that's what I'm saying. I just gave an example on if you was in the private sector, you don't get paid for not doing a job. You get paid for the work you do, the amount of hauling you do as a truck driver, just like the school buses are hauling kids, they're hauling commodity, and they are our kids. So they shouldn't expect to get paid if they're not working.
Well, I know about the private haulers, the private owner operators. My son-in-law is one, and he's been taking a beating on diesel fuel the last several weeks. And he had somebody wreck his truck, and he was out of commission for a couple weeks till his truck got fixed. And I see that with my son-in-law, living in that private sector pain that's out there. Now, he's hauling product. We're hauling kids who have a guaranteed guaranteeing a right to public education. So there's a comparison, but again, there isn't. And it really comes down to, these people have been good to this district, and we could vote this down and just bid it out and see what happens. We could go that route if we like. But
like I said, I understand 50% over $5 a gallon. I understand that because fuel prices are going up. I don't understand paying people for products that aren't rendered.
So you asked what other districts are paying. I have one at 115, one at 110, one at 100, and one that their contract's up right now and they're at 104. One district is completely different and is paying a lot more, and it's an outside contract. And I'm missing one district. I've never got that information. You guys all have this information in the packet that I did give you with the districts and everything, but I won't get that here. And also, back 5 years ago when we redid these contracts were at 105%. So we did go back down to 100%, and now they're just asking for us to slowly kind of work our way back up.
would you like more time to think about it, board? Would you want it to be tabled for the next meeting and think about it some more, and maybe Brandon can get some more information back out to us, or you want to go?
I just want to see at least the language in that one.
Well, I can just change that.
Cleaned up, and then we'll pass.
I can just make that change, and we can just accept that change.
Deal, friendly amendment to correct that verbiage, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so amendment to correct that verbiage, make it more clear and accurate. All right,
And do
you
these
second
other
that other
contracts
amendment?
also have that guarantee in them?
Some do, some don't.
Did I rope you?
You know, I cannot completely get my hands around, having an immense appreciation for what we do have in this district with our contractor, how fortunate we are. And I don't believe they take advantage, of that. So is there any other language that would offer them the type of support they would need if they're going to the bank for a loan, short of stating specifically X number of days will be paid out of 180? Can a statement, simply address the fact that if the district is closed, there will, you can have negotiations, or there may be some level of support offered, or I don't know.
Well, kind of 3.2 and 3.3 kind of cover that a little bit, because 3.2 tells you the 175 days, but then the next one says if we close for an epidemic or a pandemic, which is what we were thinking might happen, then we're only paying them 50% of the daily rate. So we are covering ourselves a little bit.
Right, I was wondering how those two numbers went together. So it's the guaranteed days, but if it's closed,
it goes to
the rate goes down to 50.
Yeah, so if we're only open 150 days because we have a pandemic, then the 25 days would be paid at 50%.
Okay. So it's not.
So that protects us a
Right.
little bit.
Yes.
So the guaranteed compensation of the 175 isn't full rate, it's.
Right.
Yeah, okay, that's, okay.
I mean, if there's not a time crunch, I would consider a motion to table till the next.
Well, first things first, did I rope you into an amendment, offering an amendment to clarify that verbiage? You good with that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm still searching for verbiage with the
Well,
175, I'd sooner see us, look to pay X number of days of non-work versus guaranteeing them 175 days paid.
Well, as you said, if we were only 150 days, only open, I say 150 full days, the 25 days of the, to get the 175, that would be at the 50%, not the full amount.
What's the scenario that outside of this pandemic that they don't run? Short of, I mean, we make up all the days, we have to go 180.
And we
I
are
don't
usually scheduled
understand
182.
why that language has to be in there. When the 3.3 then says, well, but if it's a pandemic and we're shut down, you'll pay us 50 when we don't.
They
work.
need the days though for their bank loans. The bank wants to see a guarantee of so many days.
You would come up short if the state's closed or we went to a series of remote days that put us out for an extended period of time. You're not gonna hit it with snow days here and there, and we have not shifted snow days to remote days. We've kept good old-fashioned snow days, and I don't see us pivoting to remote days on snow days. If you had a catastrophic loss to a building, you would still manage to find and have school.
Yes, there's still be
In some,
transportation.
yeah,
to that
you might
building.
increase it because you might be going AM and PM schooling. So I don't know how many scenarios you're going to run into other than the state saying you're shutting down, like they did. I don't know where you're gonna run into.
So is it so remote that even though it's an item in there, it's never going to be?
I'm not worried about it.
Yeah,
I'm not concerned about it.
What about a natural disaster?
It's gonna hit all 4 buildings.
I'm not talking about it hitting the building, I'm talking about let's say a flood.
Okay.
Flood that happens during the school year, and there's roads that are wiped out all over the district, bridges that are out. You never say never. I've lived long enough that I know that you never know when that next event's gonna happen. And all you do know is sooner or later an event will happen, whether it's a flood or something else. So you can't never say
Well,
never.
we did kind of go through that already.
We had a flood in 2016 where we lost 5 bridges and several roadways. And we were up and we were shut down for 1 day. It happened on a Thursday. We were shut down for Friday. On Monday, the roads that were bad, we had the police escort the buses in on the first run so that people were aware that they were taking different routes and to slow traffic down because kids were in different places. But we were closed down for 1 day when we lost those bridges and stuff, and we got everything rerouted.
Okay, then I'll go the other way around. If you're so convinced that nothing will ever happen, it'll never be used, why is it in there?
Why is it in there?
Yeah, if it's never gonna be
Because the
used.
bank loans are requesting the days.
But if it's never gonna be used, why does it,
I think
why does it need to be in there?
I don't know how you the other side, but it seems like the bank would have to answer that. Why
Yeah.
does the bank need to see it in there?
Even then, they're not saying that it's never going to be used, it's just there as a precaution and the banks need it.
So basically, if we want our kids to ever ride on new buses and not old buses, meaning that people have to get a loan to buy the bus, if the bank says it has to be in there.
You have to replace them so often, right?
Where's,
They just have to pass inspection, they don't have to replace them.
where's the proof that the banks are saying it has to be in there?
They had asked for it and when
Yeah.
I talked to them,
Talk to who?
when I met with the contractors to go over it.
Yeah, I said, where's the proof that the banks are requiring it to be in there?
I don't have anything besides them asking for it.
Okay.
All right.
I'm okay with that brief amendment on the first one.
Okay.
And
There's-
I'm
there's-
getting more comfort.
Okay. Second on that amendment to clarify that, the clarification on the verbiage, on the percentage issue. Second, okay. All right, so we have the clarification on the verbiage in there. We have the motion, we have the contract. Board? I mean, I guess let's do a roll call, because there might be some no's, so.
Mr. Albert?
Yes.
Mr. Bagger?
Yes.
Dr. Berry?
Yes.
Or Dr. LaCroix?
No, we're voting to
Yeah, wait,
approve this contract, correct?
Correct.
Is that what we're doing right now?
Correct.
Okay, I would say yes.
Dr. Mathers?
Yes.
Mr. Schimmel?
Yes.
Mr. Snell?
No.
Mr. Allmer?
Yes.
Okay, moving on then to Budget and Finance, BF1, acknowledgement of the MASD's financial statements for the year ending June 30, 2021, as well as the related audit report from our consultants, our PC firm.
Okay.
Anyway,
That's just an acknowledgement that they were here tonight and
Yeah.
that we received it.
yeah, we don't formally approve it, that's not our bailiwick, but we acknowledge we heard it. So do we have a motion?
To acknowledge.
All right,
Second.
okay, all in favor, any questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, ayes have it. That is the end of our action items, and moving now to information items, we do have a budget presentation from Brandy and,
Audit presentation.
an audit presentation. Sorry about that. While she's working, getting the paperwork out, can we have a motion to extend? 'Cause it's, okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll extend till 9:30.
While Brandy's getting that, can I just do a brief?
Yeah, sure.
The Perpetual Care Committee from Memorial Gardens has a meeting, working on the renovation project, renovation campaign. There's going to be an announcement in tomorrow's newspaper. We're actually getting front page.
Oh, wow.
So our campaign is out on a fast track and it's moving on quicker than we thought. It's kind of ahead of our handout material. I do have the prototype of what we're going to have available. There's a front and back, and then the inside is a description of the site and a few pictures. Again, we think it's very professionally done.
Yeah.
And done locally. I will have more at the April board meeting, and at that time I should have available, I can give each of you your own little brochure that will contain a contribution. All the contributions will be coming back to the school district. They're to be written to the Randy, so I get it right. Montoursville Memorial Fund.
The Memorial Garden Fund.
It will all be appropriately labeled.
Thank you, Dale.
Yes. If you want to see it closer, just stop by.
All ready? All right, this is the audit review. This will answer some of your questions. It'll probably create some more questions. I'm going to do a high-level overview. You have all the information, though, that I would normally provide here. So if you have further questions, email me, call me, ask me, we can come up with them later. If you come up with them during the presentation, just let me know, and I will answer them as best as I can here. So, just to remind you that, this has COVID money in it, so it's a little bit weird. But first I'm gonna start with summary. Usually my summary is my last slide, but I put it in here twice, just because I thought it was important to see, what happened, the big picture of what happened before we break it down into little pieces. The first column is our budget, and the second column is our actuals. So our revenue was actually about $2 million over, and we're gonna look at where that revenue came from. Our expenditures were actually only $654,000 over. When we budgeted, we had budgeted a deficit, knowing that, hoping that we were gonna get some more money then, and if not, we had fund balance we could use. So we actually increased our fund balance over $1 million, and I will get to what I would like to see the board do and get permission to have put on the next agenda here at the end of this. So, there's a summary. Now let's get into it and look at the local revenues. I just want to touch on a few high points here. I'm not going to go through every line item. I want to look at earned income tax. You see there we had an increase of $663,955 over what was budgeted when we were planning for the 2021 budget and we shut down. Remember, we were worried that our earned income tax was going to drop significantly. They were warning us that it was going to drop, plan for it, so we dropped our budget because we originally were going to be budgeting about 3.7 at that time. So we dropped it down $200,000 and we actually came in significantly higher there. So that is part of that $2 million increase in revenue that you saw over what we were budgeting. The next one.
Before you go on, Brandy, these figures you're giving right now has nothing to do with teacher's funding, correct?
Not, I'll pinpoint those.
It's not included in these numbers.
Right, I'll pinpoint, because they are on here, some of the monies are on here. Okay, I'll pinpoint those though for you, okay? Because that's just your earned income tax, okay? So then your real estate transfer tax, we have an increase of $51,590, and that we were planning on bumping up for 2021 also, but we did not because we were afraid houses weren't going to be selling, and you know, everything happened opposite, I think, of what we were originally thinking. So, and then our delinquent real estate tax is increased up to $161,912 over what we thought. So those are some high level ones that I wanted to talk about on that slide. Moving on to more local revenues on the next slide. Device insurance wasn't budgeted. We got about $25,000 in there. So then you see the CARES Act pass-through, the $386,600. That is part of money due to COVID-related stuff, okay? So you see that there. And then there's the miscellaneous revenues. Those are grants, just different donations, things like that. That came in at $73,631. And those vary year to year depending on what grants people write and stuff like that. But those are not COVID related, okay? So overall, local revenue made up almost 1.3 of the 2 million increase, okay? And all but 386,000 of that, so about 900,000 was just due to the economy not doing what we thought it was going to do. So right there's where, you know, a big chunk of our money comes from, okay?
Can I ask just a quick one?
Yeah.
Earned income, not to get you off track.
No.
This year, we're budgeted the same 3.5 million, I think.
Or 3.6, I have to.
It may have been a little tweak up.
We have to double check that. And then we're going to, and when we go into the next, when we go into our board meeting next in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever it is, I'll show you what we're gonna do with it. Okay? Because I'm working in 3 years right now, so I just can't remember it. I don't remember exactly. Currently right now, I will let you know, currently right now, it looks like we're gonna come in this year at about 3.8. Okay, so it's not quite the 4 million.
So the, whatever's being broadcast is with our discussion, there you go.
Oh.
Okay.
That was the earned income here that he's talking about. All right, you good?
Yes.
I'll move on to state.
I'll keep back on track and I'm
That's okay. Okay. So here I want to highlight some high-level things here. The rental and sinking fund payments. You see that huge jump right there, $248,000 $452. That's because we made early payoff payments for the 14th there. And we paid one off early, and then we paid another one off early this year. So we'll see a jump again this year, but that is something that we won't see consistently in the future. So that will be budgeted back down, okay? The Safe School Grant, that was COVID-related stuff in the 2021 year, and that was $194,000. So those are the two things I want to high level on that. Am I good to move on? So then, federal revenue. You see, I put all the COVID money kind of right together there, and we budgeted just under 200. We received $272,675, which is a $75,000 increase over what we had planned to receive.
And maybe I missed, did you comment at all about the 7,800, that was 119,000 over? Other income from state?
Okay, the other income from state is your retirement, your FICA and stuff, so we had either wages that were increased, that brought that up a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
Greater expenditure.
That's why I don't, yeah.
Understood.
Okay.
What's gear money? GEER.
That's part of the ESSER. It's one of the names of the grants. Yeah, it's all COVID money there. Okay, I just lumped it together so you can see it as a whole. So then moving on, we have a different category this year, other revenue. One of these is due to Mr. Joe Napo and his selling of some fixed assets, and that has brought in a little bit of revenue there of $15,000, and some insurance recoveries. And I looked this up, what it was, the gym floor. So we paid for it, and then we got the money back. So this was additional income that we got. You know, the expense is there for the insurance for the gym floor, but then we got the money back, so it shows up this way. It wasn't paid out directly.
The insurance for the gym floor, is that like our homeowners?
It's already bought.
Is that like our homeowners?
It's like insurance.
Yeah, yeah.
Did we, was there, what happened?
Yeah, there was the gym floor. Can you go over what happened with the gym floor?
In short view, one of the units condensated. When it got real humid, the unit automatically turned on, condensated down the whole pipe, and it drained all over the floor. Bad news was it was on at a Friday night. The only good news about it is my guys come in and do building checks on weekends. He opened the door and saw a leak. However, it was on a wood floor. We took some serious damage. So we repaired it, and then we had a company come in and refinish it, which is as nice as it looks now. So then the insurance company covered the whole cost, and then we did actually get, really said $5,000 payment for our insurance from NRG, which helped a lot too. So we didn't have to pay our deductible. So they did that for us. He said if you ever need us, we need help.
Help. That shows you where that extra $2 million in revenue was made up. And there's other categories there, they're up, down a little bit, but they weren't significant or that I thought was important to really point out. But if you do have a question, let me know and I can go over them with you. Moving on to expenditures, I like to show this slide just because you can see where the money is spent. It's something that I show all the time, so that's just there for your information. I won't spend time on it this evening, so we're on a time crunch here. So moving on to expenditures for instruction. this is the instructions for K through 12. And the big highlight here is 500 other purchase services. This is overspent by 266,000, which is basically the majority of us being over, which is your cyber charter schools. Okay.
Is wall in there too?
Yeah, I'll get to all.
Okay, all right.
Okay. So, then on the next slide here, this is your special programs, for special needs. And here, the one thing that I really wanted to point out is, we did have some savings. Our IU contract came in a little under. We had some wage and employee benefits with people leaving and people changing, healthcare plans and stuff like that. So we did have some changes there. And, but the primary extra expenditure was in the 500s, and that's your cyber charter school for those special programs. So, because we budget it in two different areas, we budget it in regular ed, and then we budget it in special ed, and right there's, another area where it's over again there. So that was the main concern there with the special programs. Here, your vocational education came in, sometimes we have more students, sometimes we have less students. We plan on what we think we're gonna have, so we did come in a little bit over there, not a huge deal there. This slide here, I'll touch on wall. That's your 300s. So that came in 512 over, because when we were putting this budget together, we didn't know we were gonna have wall. So that was, we had a lot of kids jump into it, we had a lot of expenditures with it, so that is our big expense there. Moving on. Non-pubs, we had some expense there for supplies, because with the grants, we had to put that money up to non-pubs, so we had some expense there that we normally don't have also, which isn't very little. The pupil personnel services, nothing was really too far out of line here. We were about 4,000 overspent there, but in other, altogether, that wasn't a huge amount. Instructional staff services here. This was, this includes your tech department, your library, those kinds of things. And here the big item was the 700s, the properties, which is the laptops we purchased for teachers and all the technology that we had to get, to keep operating due to COVID. So those are a lot of your COVID expenditures also there. That's showing why we're over. Moving on. To administration services. Here, the big thing that really stands out, was the finish of our settlement that we had back in 2000. So that's done with in this budget, and you can see, that effect there of $36,000. Pupil health was pretty much in line. Someone took benefits that didn't have benefits before, so that's pretty much in line there. Business services, we came in about 18,000 under, so that's pretty good there. Operation of maintenance and plant. this is mainly COVID related. Purchase services were, you know, the gym floor is in that number. So as I had talked about how we receive that money, that gym floor cost though is in that door, and the 5,000 that we received also for it is in the other revenues. So we're seeing the full almost 40,000 in this 94,000, just so you know, and that's part of that, because we have the revenue to offset it, okay? And the rest of it, we had some repairs, I think some doors were in there. I'm just trying to read my notes because I was going through and looking for higher priced items that were in there. So some of that stuff may have been budgeted, but I just pulled out some higher priced items to show what those kinds of things were. The supplies were COVID supplies mainly, and property. We had fogger stuff, we had COVID stuff, we had a tractor that we bought in that year. You know, and the tractor was budgeted, but then, you know, with all the COVID supplies and pay and those things, that's why it came in so far over the budget. So overall, the budget was over 225,000, but the majority of that stuff was funded with COVID funds for supplies and those kinds of things, okay? Student transportation services, I'll say, here looking here, the biggest expense was the 300s, which is our aid costs. So, for our specialized transportation, we have aid costs that we pay, and, that will have to be reevaluated for the next budget, because it seems like it's consistently up there. But for our contracts, we were actually under. I did want to point that out. So that came in 52,000 over. Student activities, it was a crazy year. We didn't buy a lot, we didn't do a lot, we didn't have students going, we didn't have the band going to football games. We really cut down a lot on student activities in 2021. So we saw a huge savings there. Something I don't think we'll see again, because it seems like our kids are making it to playoffs and they're back full force, which is great to see. But you know, 2021 was a huge cutback because we didn't have things going on for kids. So we saw huge savings there. Interfund transfers in and out. That was due to some refinancing we did. The $75,580 in savings there. We did some refinancing in 2020 and 2021, which saved us some money, and we did pay off a loan early in 2021. So we did see that savings there. And then here, budgetary reserve, we take it back down to zero because it's put out back into the budget. So overall, we're back to the summary. What we budgeted and what actually happened were completely different. You know, it's a picture at a moment in time of what we think is going to happen in the future. And our revenues came in much better, and our expenditures were higher, but we got supplies, we got Chromebooks, we got laptops, we got the things we needed to keep education moving, and managed to still save money in other areas and only increase us by $654,597 in expenditures. Overall, we're adding money to the fund balance. Here's the fund balance page, where we were at June 30th, 2020, just under $4 million with 3.6 available to us. Adding that million takes us up to $5,000,000 $8,119 in our fund balance. We have just over 4.6 of that unassigned available for us to do with what we need. My recommendation, and with speaking with Mrs. Basin, and the admin team, is to move, $1,030,000 over to the capital account to use towards whatever projects or improvements that need to be done in the future. We know that we have buildings that are going to need things done. Even if we don't do a project right now at this time, we know that there are needs in our buildings that are going to need to be addressed 5 to 7 years from now that are huge, and to move that over, so that is put aside for that. We can't pay off any more debt until 2024 now, so we can't move ahead debt payments at this point. But that's what I would like to do. And we've discussed it, and everyone's pretty much in agreement with the admin team. So, questions, comments?
Moving that million over to the capital reserve fund, what does that make the balance in the capital reserve?
Okay, so
About 6.
it's not 6, but it would make it about 6. Okay, because that's, and I can get a breakdown of it for you. I'll get that around and I'll email it out. I should have put something like that together. So we have a payment coming April 1st of just over $1 million from the general fund into the capital, because according to the resolutions we passed, we are paying back the capital account as we go. So they put us right around, I think, $4 million in there if we do that, but then we have $2 more million that we have to pay back, but we have another payment coming in May also.
When's the first payment coming?
April and then May.
Oh, okay. So, in June, if we move $1 million over, in June we'll have approximately $6 million in there.
A total, we have about $6 million, and we have still have payments to make next year too, that too. So it's not, you know, but the money's in our accounts to visually say, yes, we have about $6 million for a project. And the reason, I think I know where you're going with this. Why'd you have the bond presentation with only using $3 million? One, you know, I don't know if you're gonna pass the resolution to move another $1 million over to capital. Two, depending on what you select to do, I have concerns. If we do option 8, there's a lot of other things that need to be addressed, and I feel like we need at least $3 million in that capital account so we can address those as they come. Because if we have something that a roof needs done, you know, because we're gonna have a roof in 5 to 7 years out of the valley, you know, so we're saving up towards those other projects. So I'd like to leave $3 million in there.
I mean, I don't know why you couldn't propose it. I mean, I think you should propose it for us next month.
I'll put a resolution together and we'll get it on the agenda, and
I'd rather it be there than showing what some might call an excessive fund balance. You know, we typically are above what we're supposed to have anyway in that unassigned fund balance.
Exactly, it's only supposed to be 8%.
Which is kind of bizarre, really, to think about only 8%.
Well,
that's a tight budget.
Hopefully that changes here in the future.
so, I'll do $1,030,000. We didn't quite have, we were $1,029,402, but I'm gonna round up and put $1,030,000 over. Everyone's good with that?
If you need a few bucks, take it out of Joe's budget.
That's what
Everybody else does.
He'll just sell something.
That's, you know, selling everything.
So, any other questions? in, we have a few minutes, I will, I forgot to pass those out. Oh, shoot, there's 2 pages, I'm giving enough. Okay. Sorry.
Pass these two over. There's 2 pages each.
2 more sets.
Do you need to have one? You need, yeah.
There's 2 more sets there.
Complete sets?
Yes, there's only 3 more sets. I need one for the audio too.
She's got page, you got those pages done?
Yeah.
She's good.
Okay. I'm just gonna pass these.
Oh, we need one more? We need one more.
Oh, no, we don't, I'm sorry.
No, they said they're okay.
It's a 3-page document, right?
Yes. Take 2 pages, and then. Take 2 pages. Sorry, I didn't realize they weren't stapled. These are the responses to the findings in the audit. So the response to the food service management fee is the district was not reconciling the donated foods at the end of the year. The corrective action plan is when the district receives a report of the total amount of donated foods received at the end of the year, the business manager will review the credits from the food service management company to ensure that they match. I'm responsible for that, and that will be done July 1st or when we get the final reports, which is actually at the end of August usually. So that's when that will be done. We've already started tallying sheets and everything with that so that we're ensuring that it's being credited correctly. Prior, we were just putting it forward back to prior year, and we're gonna start doing it this way now. Custodial fund disbursement document was not properly maintained, documentation was not properly maintained. The student activity funds will be handled out of the business office effective July 1st, 2022. Business office staff will follow all board policies and maintain the backup for all the transactions, so that will be moving over to our office in July, and we'll be handling all those transactions. Statement of financial interest. Few of the statements of financial interest were not turned in for the year 2020, or they were turned in late. During the month of April, the business manager will send out weekly requests for statements of financial interest that have not been returned. I did that in the past for board members, but if you don't turn in your financial interest statements, this is going to continue to be on here. So turn in your financial statements of interest. If not, I'll be hounding you in April, and then if you don't turn it until May 11th, then, you know, this will still be on here, and we'll have to have this again.
If it's on there again, I think we need to name names.
You never lose mine, did you?
So, but we'll.
Don't forget.
I'll be hounding you all.
Go ahead.
Okay, no. So the fiduciary fund reporting, the district has never tracked the revenues and expenses in the accounting system. So we were, for this past year, we tracked it on Excel. The auditors didn't like it because the system isn't able to do it. But we were doing it in Excel. So effective July 1st, the fiduciary funds will be handled in the district office, and the district staff will be utilizing the accounting system to track revenues and expenditures. And this will also be much easier with the new system as the new system comes in for the financial software for us to be able to track it. It is a little bit more difficult and was something that we didn't feel the buildings should be handling, that's why we were handling it that way. So we will be taking that back, to the district office and handling it over there. The coronavirus relief fund input, the district did not maintain backup to provide evidence that the information was reviewed is complete and accurate. The district will maintain records that are stamped to provide original reporter and reviewer. This is something that we do for almost everything in the business office. We stamp it and 2 signatures go on it, the person that did it and the person that reviewed it. We will continue this process into these relief funds also. So that process has been explained and we'll be going forward with that. The coronavirus relief fund pass-through funds, the pass-through agency allowed the district lost revenue as part of the grant. It did say in there it could be what the county sent us, said that it could be used for lost revenues. So one thing I learned in this process, and I didn't know, and but any future grants, if it's through a pass-through, don't count on what the grant says in it. Always go back and read federal statutes and regulations. In this case, it really wouldn't have helped because they didn't have those available when the grant came out. Those statutes and regulations came out after the grant came out. But it is an important thing to remember because it would have been something I wouldn't have thought about. So whether I agree with this or don't agree, I agree with it because it's there now, but it's hard when something came out after the fact. And the county said we could use it for that.
So you have documentation where the county said that you can use it for that, right? So the county can't come back on us for it, but the federal government can, correct?
I don't know. I don't, because
Not can, maybe that's the wrong word, could.
Yeah, and I don't know, because there's all this money that they put into the economy, they don't have people to go out and spend.
Right.
And there were regulations when you spent it. So those are things.
But what, the main point I'm trying to get across is the county, you have proof that the county, allowed it, so they can't come back and say, give us some money back.
It's in the application.
Right.
So, but they still could because they screwed up, you know. I don't know. I don't know how it will play out. So.
Yeah, let me know how that works out for you.
But it's very clear that we didn't, like if people are saying, oh, we're gonna investigate to see, I mean, the paperwork when we filed it said that that use was acceptable. So like you said, technically, no one from the county can say you were shady, this was sketchy. It's like, how could we have followed something that it was said that we could do it and the other regs didn't come out till after?
And the way I understand it, it was put in the application, that was how it was being spent, and they approved it. And then, okay, so, yeah, we're at 9:30, so let me just finish up. And the last one is for the financial statements of interest, but it's for the federal programs piece of it. So it's just a repeat, so, okay, thank you.
I don't know if there's any items that you wanted to bring. I will say one thing, Joe was talking about working with David and anybody else who wants to work with him to see some kind of survey to get the pulse of the community, large pulse of the community on what's their sense on what the district should do project-wise. Because, you know, as it is right now, we haven't been reaching out, and we have to, so.
What happened to us going into having public at the Valley, having at the at the lighter.
We can do that. Yeah, we can do that.
Reaching out to.
And here's all it means. If we do that extended effort, we won't start construction in 2024, if that's what the board wants. If the board wants to do a major project in 2024, it wouldn't happen. You're gonna push it to the next year. So keep that in mind, whatever your sense of what we should do, that plays in. If it's just an HVAC project, then we would be able to start that project in 2024. So, you know, there's implications no matter how you slice it.
What did you say our deadline pretty much is here?
If we want to do a full scale, get out to the community, have these meetings, and it pushes us into the summer before we finally know what we think the community is acceptable to the community, if we go that far, we won't start construction in 2024 on a bigger project. It won't happen. It's gonna start in 2025. Scott already told me that.
And I think we can't, was the timeline to start construction summer of 2023? I thought it had to be approved by May. So if we don't do this, if this is delayed.
No, a major project won't start then. It won't start then. That's not what Scott said. No, where we are now with the way that the construction industry and the market is, because they're gonna need to do the design through this coming fall and winter, and then bids would go out sometime next year, but it'd be too late to really start construction.
Meaning it wouldn't be still summer?
Yeah, no, he said 2024 is when we can start a major construction project. It's a different day than it was 6 years ago, 3 years ago.
Can we vote on an option and get the ball rolling and then get public input? Because until we sign a contract, nothing's going, right?
That's the board's decision. If you'd like to get the cart before the horse, that's your decision.
Well, we need a public input before we vote on an option.
So, my thought was, I understand about like having the different buildings and having people come to that.
Oh, hey, motion to set aside the half hour extension and to set aside the time limit in our policy. I forget how the wording is. We're 9:33, we're deliberating, we really should set that aside now. So a motion to set aside our time constraints as prescribed in policy.
Motion to set aside time constraints.
In a second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right, you go.
So I understand what we're saying about having a public meeting and everything, but you're still gonna have people that say, well, I didn't know about that. And you're still gonna have people that, are gonna say, you didn't do that. I don't know if what my idea is a good idea or not a good idea, because I've never done this before, but I'm envisioning like doing some sort of a public survey that we would probably have to spend money on mailings to do something like this. And that could run, Dave, what did you think, like $2,000 to $3,000?
That's just for the mailing, and depending on how slick a postcard or mailing you do, you might have another 1,000 or 2 in that, so.
You also have to educate the public before you get there.
And that's
Right.
what, you can explain a little bit about what your
So my
thought was.
point, initially, my point is, I think we need a one-page, whether it's a spreadsheet of the 5 to 10 year savings and costs of the 2 or 3 options we're considering, because you need to give them the facts to get the input. You can't say in an ideal world, I want 2 elementary schools, no taxes raised, and the shortest bus route. You need to say, do you value this enough that when you look at these 5 to 10 year numbers, you would make this choice? You know what I mean? So I guess, that slows everything down, but I don't think you can start asking opinions without having factual, accurate information that we're all looking at the same numbers to say, given these facts, what is your preference?
Would it be possible to have something kind of like the Web Weekly? Not exactly every single week, but maybe like once a month, once every 2 months?
Well, and I guess could we do anything with just do you do a newspaper blitz, a Facebook page, a robocall, an email, or you think it clearly needs to be distributed to every, it's almost like.
You still need, what you guys are talking about is getting the information out there, but you're not getting any input by putting information out
That
there.
was
our first survey.
The survey would either be part of that information or would follow that up.
But a survey don't get people's questions asked.
Well, you can have a special board meeting to have them come to.
But we talked about,
hit
we
mail
talked about
or
it.
any question.
We could talk about going out to the communities, going around and visiting the fire hall church, wherever we're gonna go to say, and give that presentation that Scott gave. He would come up and, he knows that's what you gotta do if you wanna get a project. You come up and do this presentation.
And I believe we had the postcards ready to do that, and then COVID hit, and we could not have our series of meetings.
Yeah, that's right, we were gonna do that.
started
Right.
with the
Yeah,
facility study presentations, we did a couple of those, and we were going to continue, going to different areas of the district, and COVID hit, and that didn't happen. So our next step was to go out and meet with the public.
That is where you can pick it up from, potentially.
Well,
But if no one's coming here, we think if we went out 2 places, we would get better attendance?
Dale, in the early days of the high school project, it probably wasn't well attended then, was it? And then it's finally when it builds enough impetus, that's when people start to pay attention. It takes time to get people's attention. I mean, I know that there was 10 newspaper articles, because I went back and looked back through time, and there was 10 paid newspaper articles on the high school project. I never paid attention until I went back and looked and counted them all. So we don't pay attention, we sometimes just don't pay attention, and finally it catches up with us.
Well, I will say that you gotta realize publication on the Sun Gazette isn't the biggest in the world. I like his idea of sending out a mailer to inform people, but we need to carry it further than that to get input too.
Right, but I think I would like input. I want people to come and talk to us, but there's also people that can't come and talk to us, so a survey would give us a more general input.
Well, there's some people that will say, yeah, I want to do it, and they just won't.
Yeah,
And then when push comes to shove, they'll say, hey, I wanted to say something, why,
So the mailer and the survey, I think, is a good idea.
I like all the ideas. I like what you're saying, going out and talking to people, but I think you gotta sort of blanket everybody in different ways, maybe.
I mean, if you found days that people aren't working or doing things with their family, that would maybe up the attendance, because I know that people don't like to come here because they have work, they have family, they have a whole bunch of things that they not necessarily have to do in their life. So the survey would kind of give that, you can't make it, and here's your opportunity, if that makes sense.
And obviously there would have to be funds involved. If people are returning it by paper, someone needs to tabulate, enter into a computer to get all the averages and everything like that.
Would you want to have a special session and that would be the only thing, we would just hammer out, what's our map forward? What are we gonna do? How are we gonna do it? I almost think we probably need to do that, so we have a roadmap, and then we'll define it and then do it. But I don't wanna pick up the other meetings to do that, because I envision that being a meeting in and of itself, if we're gonna have a special session just to discuss the path forward.
So we're saying we've already passed the summer 2024 construction, so now we're looking at summer 2025.
That's on a major project, yes. Not on the
Meaning like option 3, or 1 or 2 or 3.
Right, those, yeah. But the HVAC, no. No, you could light that up right now if you want to do it. It would happen starting next year. So in some sense, well, if we rush it and don't get the coverage we believe it deserves, maybe you can make that construction, but then you run the risk of the feedback of we didn't know. So,
well, we all know what that can lead to.
So
how do we proceed?
Can we still have time to do that if we like met next week and decided that the route we wanted to go and?
You're not gonna decide that in a week.
What do you mean the route we wanna go down, like just this?
Not the vote, the route we wanna go to advertise
Yeah.
and.
Oh.
Advertise, publicize.
Okay. That makes sense.
All right, well, next Tuesday.
Social media expert. Put that out there.
How about I have Randy advertise for a special session to discuss the construction project, just to discuss that, and our goal will be to map out a strategy for publicizing, for getting the public feedback, input, so we can finally arrive at a position we think is consistent with what the public say.
So you want to do it next Tuesday?
Yeah, I mean, I don't wanna do that at the regular meeting, so. Okay, all right. Next Tuesday, get your ideas worked out, folks, and let's hammer something out.
And Brandy, you wanna make sure that's put on the website and also the Facebook pages, as well as it's in the paper.
TikTok, Twitter.
I'm surprised you know that.
Now we need somebody to answer to, so.
Got it.
Well, you know a lot about TikTok.
Okay.
Don't look at me.
Okay, all right, I guess if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
All the teachers know we're considering this, I can't.
It is what it is. All right, where was that motion? Do we have a motion? Move to second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
You gonna fall asleep?
Yeah. Always.